The metallic walls of the containment chamber shimmered faintly under the dim emergency lights, casting an eerie glow across the room. Captain Marcus Kane stood rigid, his combat boots planted firmly on the reinforced steel floor, his hands gripping the pulse rifle slung across his chest. His breathing was steady despite the chaos that had unfolded just moments ago. The alien vessel had breached Earth's atmosphere without warning, descending like a meteor before landing in the desolate wastelands outside Sector 7. It wasn't supposed to be this way. Humanity had prepared for invasion scenarios, war games, simulations, and countless drills, but nothing could have prepared him for what he now faced. The ship loomed above them like a living entity, its surface shifting subtly as if it were alive. Organic tendrils snaked along its hull, pulsing with bioluminescent hues of violet and gold. It defied logic, blending technology and biology into something almost incomprehensible. The airlock had opened without hesitation when their squad approached, revealing not an army or weapons but a single figure bathed in radiant light. She emerged slowly, her presence commanding silence from even the most hardened soldiers around him. Her form was otherworldly yet unmistakably feminine, tall and statuesque, with skin that shimmered like liquid silver under the flickering lights. Eyes the color of molten amber locked onto Marcus, and in that instant, he felt stripped bare, as though she could see every secret buried deep within him. Her voice resonated through the chamber, bypassing any need for translation devices. It simply existed in his mind, intimate and undeniable. "Human," she said, her tone rich and melodic, carrying both authority and curiosity. "You stand here armed against me, yet I sense no malice in your heart. Why do you resist?" Marcus swallowed hard, forcing himself to maintain eye contact despite the overwhelming aura she exuded. He tightened his grip on the rifle, though it felt futile against whatever power radiated from her. "We don't know why you're here," he replied, his voice steady despite the storm brewing inside him. "Your kind doesn't announce itself peacefully." A soft chuckle rippled through the room, not mocking but amused, almost affectionate. She tilted her head slightly, studying him like one might study a rare artifact. "Peaceful? No, perhaps not entirely. But neither am I here to destroy." Her gaze softened, becoming less probing and more intrigued. "I am Zera, Queen of the Velari. My arrival is not one of conquest but of convergence. And you," she added, stepping closer until mere inches separated them, "are central to my purpose." Every instinct screamed at Marcus to step back, to raise his weapon, to defend himself, but he couldn't move. Not because of fear, but because there was something else holding him in place. A strange warmth spread through his body, starting where her eyes met his and radiating outward. It wasn't pain, nor was it pleasure. It was connection, raw and primal, as though some unseen force sought to bind them together. Zera extended a hand toward him, palm up, fingers long and elegant. They glowed faintly, veins of luminous energy running beneath translucent skin. "Let us become one," she whispered, her words reverberating through his very soul. "Merge completely with me, human. Together, we can transcend what either of us has ever known." The room seemed to shrink around them, all noise fading into a distant hum. Marcus's pulse quickened, his thoughts racing. What did she mean by merge? Was this some alien ritual? An assimilation? Or was it something far deeper, something beyond comprehension? His training told him to refuse, to fight, to protect humanity, but his heart hesitated. There was sincerity in her expression, a vulnerability hidden beneath layers of regal confidence. She wasn't asking out of greed or malice. She truly believed in what she offered. And then came the realization that froze him entirely. This wasn't about domination or control. This was about unity, a merging of two beings so fundamentally different they might create something entirely new. Something greater. Before he could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility, shattering the fragile moment. Red lights flashed overhead, signaling an intrusion alert. Zera's expression shifted instantly, her serene demeanor replaced by sharp focus. "They've come for me," she said, her voice laced with urgency. "My people will not allow this union. They fear what we might become." Marcus barely had time to process her words before the first explosion rocked the chamber. Shards of metal rained down as the wall exploded inward, revealing a squadron of armored figures, Valari warriors, their forms sleek and predatory, weapons humming with lethal energy. They moved with precision, surrounding Zera and leveling their weapons at Marcus. "Stand down!" one of them barked, his voice guttural and mechanical compared to Zera's melodic tones. "Your interference ends now, human." Zera stepped forward, shielding Marcus with her body. Her voice rang out clear and commanding, silencing the warriors momentarily. "You dare challenge the will of your queen?" she demanded, her eyes blazing with fury. "This is my choice, not yours." The lead warrior hesitated, his weapon wavering slightly. "Forgive me, my liege," he said, bowing his head briefly. "But the council forbids such contamination. We cannot permit this abomination." Contamination. Abomination. The word struck Marcus like daggers, cutting through the haze of confusion and leaving behind anger. He didn't understand everything happening around him, but one thing was certain: these creatures saw him as inferior, unworthy of standing beside their queen. Yet Zera defied them, risking everything to protect him. "Why? Enough!" Zera snapped, her voice echoing with power. The ground trembled beneath their feet as tendrils of energy erupted from her fingertips, forming a protective barrier around herself and Marcus. "I will not be swayed by fear or tradition. If you wish to take me, you will have to kill him first." The standoff stretched taut, tension crackling in the air like static electricity. Marcus tightened his grip on his rifle, knowing full well how futile it would be against their advanced weaponry. Still, he wouldn't go down without a fight, not while she stood beside him, willing to sacrifice everything for reasons he couldn't yet grasp. Time seemed to slow as Zera turned to face him once more, her expression softening despite the chaos erupting around them. "Do you trust me, human?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the din. Trust. It was a dangerous word, especially now. But looking into her eyes, those molten pools of determination and longing, he found himself nodding. "Yes," he said, his voice firm despite the uncertainty gnawing at his gut. A flicker of relief passed over her features, followed quickly by resolve. Without warning, she reached out and placed a glowing hand on his chest, directly over his heart. The warmth returned, stronger this time, flooding his senses with sensations he couldn't describe. Images flashed before his eyes, visions of stars being born, galaxies colliding, life blossoming in ways he'd never imagined. It was beautiful, terrifying, and utterly overwhelming. "You must choose," Zera murmured, her voice trembling with emotion. "To merge with me is to leave behind everything you've ever known. To embrace something infinite. Do you accept?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Acceptance meant abandoning humanity, his identity, his world. Refusal meant losing her, and possibly dying alongside her. Either way, there was no turning back. As Marcus opened his mouth to answer, another blast shook the chamber, sending debris cascading down around them. The decision had to be made now. He began, his voice breaking under the weight of the moment. And then everything went black. When consciousness returned, Marcus found himself suspended in a void of shimmering light and swirling colors. The sensation was disorienting, like floating in warm water without gravity. Every breath felt amplified, each heartbeat echoing endlessly. Panic surged within him, but it was quickly tempered by a soothing presence, an ethereal calm that seeped into his very bones. "Relax," came Zera's voice, soft and enveloping, as if carried on the wind. "You are safe here." He tried to speak, to ask where, or what, this place was, but his voice failed him. Instead, he focused on the feeling of her presence, which grew stronger with each passing second. Slowly, shapes began to materialize in the kaleidoscope of light. Vast landscapes stretching infinitely, cities made of crystalline structures that pulsed with rhythmic energy, skies painted with hues no human eye had ever seen. It was breathtaking, surreal, and utterly alien. "This is my essence," Zera explained, her tone tinged with reverence. "The core of who I am. By bringing you here, I have begun the process of merging our consciousnesses. To fully integrate, however, requires more than observation. It demands surrender." Surrender. The word echoed in his mind, stirring conflicting emotions. Surrender implied loss, of control, of self, of identity. Yet as he gazed at the wonders unfolding before him, he couldn't deny the allure. Here, in this realm of pure possibility, limitations seemed irrelevant. Pain, fear, doubt, all dissolved into insignificance. Could he truly give up everything he knew for this? For her? Before he could dwell further on the question, memories began flooding back unbidden. Fragments of his life played out in vivid detail. Childhood laughter under the sun, the sting of loss when his parents died, the camaraderie of military service, the loneliness that crept in during quiet nights. Each memory carried weight, anchoring him to his humanity. Tears welled in his eyes as he realized how much he stood to lose. "Do not fear letting go," Zara whispered, her voice brushing against his thoughts like a gentle breeze. "What you leave behind will not vanish. It will become part of us, enriching what we create together." Her words resonated deeply, striking a chord he hadn't realized existed. Perhaps she was right. Perhaps the act of merging wasn't about erasure but evolution, a transformation that preserved the essence of both while forging something entirely new. But still, doubt lingered. "Why me?" he asked finally, his voice trembling. "Out of everyone, why choose me?" For a moment, there was only silence. Then her presence enveloped him completely, filling the void with warmth and understanding. "Because you are unique," she replied simply. "Not because of your strength or skill, though those qualities are admirable, but because of your willingness to question, to hesitate, to feel. You carry within you the capacity for growth, for change. That is rare among your kind, and among mine." Her admission left him speechless. In all his years of service, Marcus had always prided himself on duty and discipline, on following orders without hesitation. Yet here, in this liminal space between worlds, he was being praised for the very traits he often suppressed: his doubts, his vulnerabilities, his humanity. "But what happens after?" he pressed, desperate for clarity. "If we merge, what becomes of US?" "The outcome is uncertain," Zara admitted, her voice tinged with both excitement and trepidation. "Our union will reshape reality itself, transcending the boundaries of individuality. We may lose ourselves entirely, or we may discover a truth greater than anything either of us has ever known. There are no guarantees, only potential." Potential. The word sparked something within him, igniting a fire he hadn't felt in years. For so long, he'd lived within the confines of expectation, adhering to rules and roles dictated by others. But here, in this moment, he was faced with a choice that transcended all of that. To embrace the unknown, to leap into the abyss without knowing what lay beyond. It was terrifying, exhilarating, and undeniably freeing. Yet even as the idea took root, shadows crept into his mind. Doubts whispered insidiously, reminding him of the cost. What of Earth? Of humanity? If he chose this path, would he be betraying them? Would he be abandoning his species to whatever fate awaited them in the wake of Zara's arrival? As if sensing his turmoil, Zara's presence shifted, becoming firmer, more resolute. "Your people will endure," she assured him. "This is not about conquest or destruction. It is about creation, a new beginning born from the union of two worlds. Should you accept, you will not abandon them. You will elevate them, offering a glimpse of what they might become." Her words provided solace, but they also raised questions he wasn't ready to answer. Elevate them? How? At what cost? And what of the Velari warriors who had attacked them earlier? Were they truly enemies, or merely pawns caught in a larger conflict? Before he could delve deeper into these uncertainties, the void around him began to shift. Colors darkened, light dimmed, and the harmonious symphony of energy faltered, replaced by discordant notes that grated against his senses. Panic surged anew as he realized something was wrong. "They've found us," Zara said, her voice strained with urgency. "The Council has sent enforcers to sever our connection. If they succeed, the merging will fail, and you will be lost forever." Lost forever. The phrase sent chills coursing through him. Whatever doubts remained were overshadowed by the sudden, visceral fear of separation. Despite the risks, despite the unknowns, he couldn't bear the thought of losing her. Not now, not after everything they'd shared. "What do I do?" he asked, his voice cracking with desperation. "Focus," she instructed, her tone commanding yet tender. "Anchor yourself to me. Let go of fear, of resistance. Trust in the bond we are creating. Only then can we prevail." With no time to hesitate, Marcus closed his eyes and reached out, not physically, but mentally, emotionally. He poured every ounce of his being into the connection, clinging to her presence like a lifeline. Memories, emotions, desires, all merged into a torrent of raw energy that surged between them, intertwining their essences in ways he couldn't comprehend. The pressure intensified, threatening to overwhelm him. Pain flared along his nerves, sharp and unrelenting, but he forced himself to endure. Through the agony, he sensed Zara's strength bolstering his own, her determination fueling his resolve. Together, they pushed back against the encroaching darkness, fighting to preserve the fragile bond they had forged. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the assault ceased. Light returned, vibrant and radiant, bathing the void in warmth. Breathing heavily, Marcus opened his eyes to find Zara gazing at him, her expression a mixture of awe and gratitude. "You have chosen," she said softly, her voice trembling with emotion. "Now, let us finish what we started." Without waiting for a response, she extended her hand once more, her touch igniting a final surge of energy that consumed them both. Reality dissolved into brilliance, and Marcus surrendered completely, embracing the unknown with every fiber of his being. The transition shattered Marcus's perception of self, plunging him into a maelstrom of sensations and revelations that defied description. Time unraveled, stretching and contracting in waves, while space expanded infinitely outward before collapsing inward again. He was no longer confined to a singular body or consciousness. Instead, he became a part of something vast and interconnected, threads of existence weaving together in patterns too intricate to comprehend. Within this tapestry, Zara's essence intertwined with his own, their identities merging like rivers converging into a boundless ocean. At first, the experience was overwhelming. Memories flooded in, not just his own, but hers as well. He witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations across galaxies, the birth of stars, the silent whispers of cosmic winds. He felt the weight of millennia pressing upon him, centuries of wisdom and sorrow layered upon his mortal frame. Yet, amidst the deluge, there was clarity. He understood now why Zara had chosen him. The fragility of his humanity complemented the resilience of her alien nature, creating a balance neither could achieve alone. Their union wasn't merely physical or mental. It transcended those boundaries entirely. Emotions blended seamlessly, joy and grief coexisting without contradiction. Love, in its purest form, coursed through their shared consciousness, binding them tighter than any physical tether ever could. It was not possessive or conditional but expansive, encompassing all possibilities and potentials. For the first time, Marcus grasped the true meaning of unity, not as a compromise or sacrifice, but as an elevation of existence itself. Yet, even as they soared through realms beyond mortal comprehension, echoes of their respective worlds lingered. Zara's memories brought glimpses of her homeworld, a planet teeming with organic machinery and sentient ecosystems. Its inhabitants, the Velari, were not born but grown, their lives shaped by collective consensus rather than individual choice. Innovation thrived, yet freedom stagnated. Marcus saw flashes of council chambers where debates raged over the ethics of expansion, the fear of contamination, the dread of losing cultural purity. These visions revealed the source of the resistance they faced, the rigid adherence to tradition that stifled progress and rejected outsiders. In turn, Marcus's memories painted a stark contrast. Earth, flawed and fractured, yet brimming with untamed creativity. Humanity's history was one of struggle and survival, marked by cycles of destruction and rebirth. Wars, plagues, revolutions, each tragedy carved scars into the collective psyche, yet none extinguished the indomitable spirit that drove them forward. Zara absorbed these fragments with wonder, marveling at the chaotic beauty of a species that clung so fiercely to hope despite overwhelming odds. Together, they formed a bridge between two extremes: order and chaos, structure and spontaneity, permanence and impermanence. But the merging was not without cost. As their consciousnesses fused, fragments of their former selves began to dissolve. Marcus felt pieces of his identity slipping away, like grains of sand slipping through clenched fingers. His name, once a cornerstone of his being, faded into irrelevance. The faces of friends and comrades blurred, their voices muted by the symphony of universal truths unfolding within him. Panic clawed at the edges of his awareness, threatening to undo the fragile equilibrium they had achieved. "It is necessary," Zara reassured him, her voice a soothing balm against the storm. "To hold on to what you were is to limit what we can become. Trust in the process. Trust in us." Her words steadied him, grounding him in the present moment. Gradually, the panic subsided, replaced by acceptance. He realized that losing parts of himself did not equate to annihilation. Rather, it allowed room for growth. What remained was distilled, purified, a core essence unburdened by trivialities. And within this newfound clarity, he discovered something extraordinary: the ability to perceive the interconnectedness of all things. Stars were no longer distant points of light. They were kin, ancient ancestors whose remnants fueled the fires of creation. Planets breathed, their surfaces alive with stories etched in stone and soil. Even the void of space hummed with latent potential, awaiting the spark of life to ignite it. As their bond deepened, Marcus began to understand the scope of their mission. This was not merely about uniting two beings or bridging two worlds. It was about catalyzing a paradigm shift. Their union represented the dawn of a new epoch, one where dualities dissolved and multiplicity flourished. They were pioneers, architects of a future where differences were celebrated rather than feared, where boundaries dissolved into harmony. However, the path ahead was fraught with peril. The Velari Council, unwilling to relinquish control, viewed their merging as a threat to stability. Enforcers pursued them relentlessly, their weapons designed to dismantle the fragile link between Zara and Marcus. Each attack sent shockwaves through their shared consciousness, threatening to unravel the delicate web they had woven. Yet, with each assault, their resolve strengthened. They adapted, drawing strength from the diversity of their combined experiences. Strategies evolved, blending human ingenuity with alien precision. They fought not out of hatred or vengeance but out of necessity. For themselves, for their peoples, for the universe itself. Through it all, love remained their anchor. It buoyed them during moments of doubt, fortified them against despair. It was not romantic love, though elements of that existed, but a profound, unconditional devotion to the idea of unity. Love as a force of creation, capable of transcending barriers and forging connections where none previously existed. It was this love that sustained them, guiding their actions and shaping their destiny. As they navigated the labyrinth of their shared existence, Marcus and Zara encountered fragments of others who had attempted similar unions. Some had succeeded, leaving behind legacies of peace and prosperity. Others had failed, their attempts ending in catastrophe. From these echoes, they gleaned valuable lessons, learning to navigate the precarious balance between integration and autonomy. They understood now that true unity did not demand uniformity. It celebrated diversity, recognizing that strength lay in difference. Still, challenges loomed on the horizon. The Council's enforcers grew more determined, their tactics increasingly ruthless. Allies were few, scattered across galaxies and wary of involvement. Yet, Marcus and Zara pressed onward, driven by the knowledge that their success, or failure, would ripple through the cosmos, shaping the fates of countless beings. And so, they continued their journey, hand in metaphysical hand, forging a path into the unknown. Their story was far from over, but already, it had transformed them irrevocably. What began as an encounter between two vastly different entities had blossomed into something extraordinary. A testament to the power of connection, the beauty of evolution, and the infinite possibilities inherent in the act of becoming. The battlefield stretched endlessly before them, a sprawling expanse of scorched earth and crumbling ruins. The once pristine facility had been reduced to rubble, its metallic walls twisted into grotesque sculptures by relentless bombardment. Smoke curled upward in thick plumes, choking the air and casting the landscape in perpetual twilight. Amidst the chaos, Marcus and Zara stood side by side, their forms illuminated by bursts of energy as the enforcers unleashed volley after volley of devastating attacks. Each strike sent tremors through their shared consciousness, testing the limits of their newfound unity. The merging had granted them unparalleled strength and agility, but it was not infallible. Cracks began to form along the edges of their bond, tiny fissures that threatened to splinter their connection entirely. With every blow, Marcus felt pieces of himself slipping away, fragments of his humanity dissolving under the strain. Yet, Zera's presence remained steadfast, her essence flowing into him like a river replenishing dry land. Together, they weathered the storm, drawing upon reserves of resilience neither had possessed alone. The enforcers moved with calculated precision, their movements synchronized in a deadly dance. Weapons hummed with malevolent energy, targeting them with unerring accuracy. One warrior lunged forward, his blade slicing through the air with lethal intent. Marcus reacted instinctively, raising a shimmering shield of energy just in time to deflect the blow. The impact reverberated through his arms, jarring his bones and sending waves of pain coursing through his body. Beside him, Zera retaliated with a burst of radiant force, sending the attacker sprawling backward. "We can't keep this up forever," Marcus gritted out, his voice strained. Sweat dripped from his brow, mingling with the dust coating his skin. Exhaustion clawed at his muscles, threatening to drag him under. "There's too many of them." Zera's expression hardened, her molten eyes blazing with determination. "Then we must adapt. We are stronger together than apart." She extended a glowing hand, tendrils of energy snaking outward to wrap around his wrist. Instantly, warmth surged through him, revitalizing his weary limbs. "Draw from me," she urged, her voice firm despite the fatigue evident in her posture. "Let us become one in action as well as spirit." Trusting her implicitly, Marcus allowed the energy to flow into him, amplifying his strength and sharpening his reflexes. As one, they launched into motion, their movements fluid and synchronized. Zera's bioluminescent tendrils lashed out, ensnaring multiple attackers and hurling them aside with effortless grace. Marcus followed up with precise strikes, wielding his pulse rifle with renewed vigor. Bullets of concentrated energy tore through the air, finding their marks with unerring precision. Despite their efforts, the tide of battle showed no signs of abating. More enforcers poured into the fray, their numbers seemingly endless. The council's resolve was absolute. They would not allow the merging to succeed, even if it meant obliterating both queen and consort in the process. Desperation gnawed at Marcus's resolve, but Zera's unwavering faith anchored him. Together, they fought on, refusing to yield. In the midst of the carnage, a revelation struck Marcus with startling clarity. Their opponents were not mindless drones. They were individuals, bound by duty and loyalty to their queen. Even now, as they clashed violently, he could sense the turmoil within them, the conflict between obedience and conscience. Compassion stirred within him, tempering his aggression. These warriors were not evil. They were victims of circumstance, caught in a web of tradition and fear. "Zera," he called out, ducking beneath a sweeping blade. "We can't win this by force alone. We have to reach them, to show them there's another way." Her golden gaze met his, understanding dawning in her expression. "You're right," she acknowledged, her voice tinged with admiration. "Violence only perpetuates the cycle. Let us try reason." With a deep breath, Marcus lowered his weapon, raising his hands in a gesture of surrender. Beside him, Zera mirrored the motion, her radiant form dimming slightly as she released her defensive barriers. The enforcers hesitated, their weapons trained on the pair but unmoving. Silence fell over the battlefield, broken only by the distant rumble of collapsing debris. "To my loyal subjects," Zera began, her voice carrying a resonance that silenced even the wind. "I understand your fears. I see the burden you bear, torn between duty and doubt. But hear me now, this union is not an act of betrayal. It is a step toward evolution, a chance to break free from the chains of stagnation and embrace a future filled with infinite possibilities." Her words hung in the air, heavy with conviction. Marcus watched as doubt flickered across the faces of the enforcers, their rigid stances wavering. One warrior stepped forward, lowering his weapon cautiously. "My queen," he said, his voice trembling. "If what you say is true, then why does the council oppose you?" Pain flickered in Zera's eyes, but she masked it quickly with resolve. "Because change frightens them. Because they cling to power rather than progress. But I ask you now, will you follow blindly, or will you choose to forge a new path?" The question hung unanswered for several tense moments. Then, slowly, the warrior knelt, bowing his head in deference. "I will follow you, my queen," he declared, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. Not out of obligation, but out of belief. One by one, others followed suit, their weapons clattering to the ground as they pledged allegiance to Zera's vision. Relief washed over Marcus, mingling with pride. They had done it, not through brute force, but through empathy and understanding. Yet, even as hope blossomed within him, a shadow loomed on the horizon. A massive vessel descended from the sky, its silhouette blotting out the stars. The council had arrived. The arrival of the council's flagship cast an ominous pall over the battlefield. Its sleek, obsidian hull absorbed light rather than reflecting it, making the vessel appear as a void in the sky. The air vibrated with its presence, a low hum that resonated deep within Marcus's bones. He exchanged a glance with Zera, her expression unwavering despite the gravity of the moment. Together, they stood at the center of the ruins, surrounded by warriors who had chosen to defy their leaders, not out of rebellion, but out of belief in a brighter future. As the ship descended, a beam of energy shot downward, carving a perfect circle into the scorched earth. From the glowing aperture emerged the council itself, 5 towering figures clad in robes woven from threads of pure starlight. Their faces were obscured by intricate masks etched with runes that pulsed faintly, symbols of authority and ancient wisdom. Each step they took radiated power, their movements deliberate and synchronized, as though they were extensions of a single collective will. "Zera," one of them intoned, their voice resonating like a chorus of voices layered atop one another. "You have defied the sanctity of our laws. You seek to taint the purity of our lineage with this contamination." Marcus felt a surge of anger at the word, but Zera placed a calming hand on his arm. Her touch steadied him, grounding him in the present. She stepped forward, her posture regal yet unyielding. "I do not seek to taint," she replied, her voice ringing clear and strong. "I seek to transcend, to evolve. Your fear blinds you to the potential we hold, to what we can become together." The council members paused, their masked heads tilting slightly as if considering her words. Then, without warning, one of them raised a gauntlet hand, and a wave of oppressive force surged outward, knocking everyone, including Marcus and Zera, to their knees. The enforcers who had pledged allegiance gasped in pain, some collapsing entirely under the weight of the psychic assault. "You presume to lecture us on evolution?" the lead council member demanded, their tone dripping with disdain. "We are the architects of existence, the stewards of order. Evolution is messy, chaotic, a gamble that risks everything we have built. We cannot allow such recklessness." Zera struggled to rise, her shimmering form flickering under the strain. "Order without growth is stagnation," she countered, her voice strained but resolute. "And stagnation leads to decay. If you refuse to adapt, then your reign will crumble beneath the weight of its own rigidity." The council hesitated, their unity faltering for the briefest of moments. It was a crack in their resolve, small but significant. Sensing an opening, Marcus pushed himself to his feet, drawing upon every ounce of strength he had left. His human frailty screamed at him to stay down, but love and purpose fueled his determination. He moved to stand beside Zera, shoulder to shoulder, facing the council head-on. "This isn't just about her," Marcus said, his voice hoarse but steady. "It's about all of us. About breaking free from the chains of fear and embracing the unknown. Yes, it's risky. Yes, it's terrifying. But isn't that what life is? Isn't that what makes it worth living?" For a moment, silence reigned. The council regarded him with unreadable expressions behind their masks, their collective energy crackling like a storm cloud. Then, slowly, one of them stepped forward, lowering their hand. The oppressive force lifted, allowing those around them to breathe freely once more. "You speak boldly for one so insignificant," the council member said, their voice tinged with something akin to curiosity. "Tell me, human, do you truly believe you are capable of bearing the burden of such transformation?" Marcus swallowed hard, meeting their gaze without flinching. "I don't know if I'm capable," he admitted. "But I know I'm willing to try. Because if there's even a chance to create something better, something greater, then it's worth every risk." The council exchanged silent glances, their masks betraying no emotion. Finally, the leader turned back to Zera. "You have always been our most brilliant creation," they said, their tone softer now, almost regretful. "Perhaps too brilliant. Perhaps we underestimated the scope of your vision." Zera inclined her head slightly, acknowledging the rare concession. "Then let me prove it to you," she implored. "Let me show you that unity does not mean loss, it means expansion. That diversity strengthens rather than weakens." The council deliberated silently, their forms motionless save for the faint pulsing of their rune-etched masks. After what felt like an eternity, the leader raised a hand, signaling for calm. "Very well," they declared, their voice carrying the weight of finality. "We will permit this union, but only under one condition." Marcus tensed, bracing himself for whatever demand they might impose. Beside him, Zera remained composed, though he could feel her anticipation thrumming through their bond. "You must demonstrate the viability of your claim," the council continued. "Not here, not now, but across the stars. Travel to worlds untouched by our influence, to civilizations teetering on the brink of collapse or flourishing in ways we cannot comprehend. Show us that your merging can bring balance where none exists, harmony where discord reigns. Only then will we accept your vision as truth." Relief washed over Marcus, tempered by the enormity of the task ahead. It was not outright rejection, nor was it unconditional acceptance, but it was a chance. A chance to prove that their union could be more than an anomaly. It could be a catalyst for change. "We accept," Zera said firmly, her molten eyes blazing with renewed purpose. "We will undertake this journey, and we will return with proof of what we can achieve." The council nodded solemnly, their forms beginning to dissolve into beams of light. Before vanishing completely, the leader spoke one final time. "Do not fail, Zera. For if you do, the consequences will extend far beyond yourselves." With that, they ascended back into their vessel, which disappeared into the heavens as swiftly as it had arrived. The battlefield fell silent once more, the tension easing but not dissipating entirely. Around them, the former enforcers rose to their feet, their expressions a mixture of awe and uncertainty. "What now?" one of them asked, his voice hesitant. Zera turned to face them, her presence radiant despite the weariness etched into her features. "Now we prepare," she said simply. "We gather allies, resources, knowledge. And then, we set forth to fulfill our promise, to show the universe that unity is not a threat, but an opportunity." Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder, feeling the warmth of her essence flow into him. They were no longer two separate beings. They were one entity, bound by trust, love, and shared purpose. The road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but they faced it together, armed with hope and the unshakable belief that they could shape a better future. As dawn broke over the horizon, casting golden light across the devastated landscape, Marcus and Zera took their first steps toward the unknown. Behind them, the remnants of battle served as a reminder of how far they had come, and how much farther they still had to go. But within their hearts burned a fire that no force in the cosmos could extinguish. Together, they would forge a new path, one that transcended boundaries and united worlds. And so, their journey began, not as conquerors or saviors, but as pioneers of a new era. An era defined not by division, but by connection. Not by fear, but by love.